Well, Jill, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on your show, Arlena. It is one of my favorite podcasts that I listen to in recovery. So thank you. It's a
You're
gift to be
so
here.
sweet. I'm so happy to hear that, this is a work of passion for me. So it's just so nice it's a labor of love, I guess I should say. So it's so nice to hear that, yay, it's helping.
Well, it shows each and every podcast. And honestly, you asked the questions that I would ask. So
Oh, good.
with your various interviewees. So in any case, yeah, thank you so much.
Of course. So I thought we would start today. We're going to definitely talk about what kind of work you do. And I'm anxious to get into your story, but I like to front load the episode with with some resources. So we'll do our not so lightning round. Are you ready?
Okay, I am.
Ready?
I feel like I'm on a game show. I love this part.
I know, yes. So when you first got sober, were there any books that really helped you early on in your recovery?
Yes. So first of all, let me just say that I want to be a reader, but I truth be told, I'm not really a reader. So for me to buy a book and highlight it and tab it. So yes, I got, there's two books, Recovery 2.0 by Tommy Rosen. And then it was the book by Stephanie Covington did basically a book and a workbook, which is a complement to AA's big book. And it's for women. And I'm blanking right now on the name.
I had her on the show. She did the Woman's Way through the 12 steps.
That's it. Thank you.
A woman's way, or is it like a gentle way? I think it's the woman's way.
I think you're right. A woman's way. Yes.
Yeah.
And
I love her.
Yes. And she really brought it together for me.
Nice.
And AA was very important to me in my early recovery. And not only did I do 90 and 90, I did 180 and 90. So and she really helped bring it all together for me. And nice. So, yes, I had the book and the workbook.
Yeah.
So those were the two. And so as both of them became like reference books. It wasn't just a read it and say, wow, that was great and shelve it. But really became like they were on my desk or by my bedside for ongoing use. So yeah.
Those are great books. I actually haven't read Tommy Rosen's book, but I am familiar with his community. He's done some like recovery summits where he has guests on, and he and I were actually on a panel together. He's doing some really good work in the recovery space. So I will definitely check that out. Thank you for mentioning that one. You're so cute. 180 meetings in your
Yes. Yes.
So would you describe yourself as an overachiever by any chance?
That's so funny you say that, because I have done Enneagram work in recovery, which is the personality. There's personality types. This is not like Myers-Briggs or DISC. This is actually ancient material, that there are 9 personality types. And I am very closely related or associated with the high achiever, as well as the high discoverer.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
I recently, I would say within the last 2 years, discovered that, and I have found it to be profoundly accurate.
Yes. Yes.
Really interesting.
Yes. And it's really helped me bring it in. Like, oh, that's my nature to always be looking to the future. And, what they say is life is what happens when you're busy making plans. So like, I really had to focus and learn how to live in the present moment. And it was helpful to just know it was my nature, like my personality type, that I'm always looking to the future and trying to excel as well. So kind of a recipe for disaster sometimes.
Yes. Well, our instincts that are out of balance are called character defects in some circles.
Yes. Yeah.
Man, You know what else I liked about the Enneagram was that it was like, if you fall into this category, these are your very typical pitfalls.
Right.
So watch out for this. And then here is a strategy to help mitigate that character defect or that pitfall.
Right.
So it wasn't only just, and then it felt very, there's something about science that makes it impersonal, that sort of alleviates like guilt and shame.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, I'm just like everyone else. Like,
Right.
it's not my fault. Oh, okay. It was like a very compassionate approach to helping you identify where your pitfalls are and how to overcome them.
Absolutely. And also understanding other people, especially those that
Oh,
are around us. It's like, oh, I understand now why everything has to be perfect.
yeah.
He's a perfectionist. He's Enneagram number 1.
You know what a great point you mentioned, that it helps us to understand others as well.
Right.
See how self-centered I am? I'm like, oh, it's all about me. That was good. Thank you for mentioning that. I actually have a couple of resources I can put in the show notes about Enneagram stuff. I'm not an expert at all, but I found it. Thank you for mentioning that. It's super helpful.
Excellent.
Is there like a go-to mantra or quote that you live by?
Yes. And honestly, this has the beauty of this. So I have many. Let me first start, but
I know it's hard to pick one.
yeah, but I'm going to go with the one that has been my mantra before I got into recovery and after I got into recovery. So in other words, it's still me, so I'm going to go with, but because I do love some of the recovery, like stay in the present moment. Mm-hmm. But the one I'm going to share is full speed ahead. And again, that does speak to my personality, but prior to recovery, I just always was like, let's just keep marching forward. And really what that's really saying is don't get boggled down by all that is readily available to grab us and take us, out of our high moments. Like just keep on going, full speed ahead. But then when I got into recovery, my son wrote me a song. He's a musician, a professional musician, and he wrote me a song and he called it Full Speed Ahead, not knowing that was my mantra. Like,
what?
Isn't that crazy?
I mean, we were talking spiritual experiences before.
If
that isn't what, I don't know what
I know. I should have saved that for that.
No, there's plenty of room for many more. Yes.
And so now what it means is, is it doesn't, so I lost a couple years there when they could have been better. But no, life is great now. And so just full speed ahead. No reason to be looking back and regrets and blame and shame, and just full speed, girlfriend. Yeah. I'm talking to myself there, and sure. You, girlfriend, to you, Arlene, my new best friend here on this
podcast. I know, right? Your new BFF. Yay.
So that
is beautiful. I love that. Letting go of especially letting go of the regret, blame, and shame.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, love that. Do you have a regular self-care routine, whether it's like a daily, weekly, or I recently interviewed a gal who talked about an annual retreat that she does. And I thought, isn't that interesting? I kind of completely spaced out on having that as part of a regular routine, but what does yours look like?
Yeah. So actually, a little bit later in the podcast, when we talk about some of my work, I am huge about routine. So that just like feeds right into something I feel so passionate about. So, my daily routine is, in general, I try to do the same things every single day around the same time, including eating approximately the same things and my water intake or my, if I'm doing celery juice, everything, my evening tea always starts at 5 o'clock. Like everything is at approximately the same time. every day. So like staying big picture on this question. And the reason is because it's so our nervous system knows what to expect. There's like no surprise. And what I want when I got into recovery, to me, it was all about healing. It was all about setting me up for success. And one of the things that I learned right out of the gate is that our nervous system, needed some TLC. And one of the best things we can do for our nervous system is to do the same things every single day around the same time, whether it's activity or food or fluid intake, meditation, and so forth. And so that is a big picture. And so for me, what that looks like is I always get up with the sun. So I sleep with basically the blinds open. Yeah. So I want the sun at 6 or 5:45. So I always get up with the sun, drink a lot of water because you by default are a little bit dehydrated in the morning. I try to get sun, even in winter, within 45 minutes of awakening. So it can get to my cellular level. And it's usually, and just depend, walking my dog or putzing in my garden. Then when the dog is done and the flowers are happy, then I come inward and I do my overall movement routine, which is either like high intensity exercise followed by yoga and meditation. And then usually a power shake, like a high quality protein shake. And that's usually like around 10:30. And I'll just stop there. We don't want to have to go through my entire day, but that just sets me in motion. And my body is like so happy and alive because I've had that morning ritual. And at that point, it's like, wow, the day is young. It's like 10:30, let's go, and I've already like had my time in nature, had my time with my dog, and I'm well nourished and hydrated. So
no, that's amazing. I feel like a morning routine is super important. Do you still attend 12-step meetings or?
I do, not daily, but I do. And especially when I'm with my friends who are doing daily meetings, AA meetings. And then I get all excited and I'm like, oh, and then I usually like get a chip because I'm behind in getting chips. But I will say the pandemic kind of, as you know, it quieted things. And then as a coach, She Recovered, Dawn Nichols, who is the owner of She Recovers, we connected and I was invited to do the coaching, the abbreviated coaching curriculum, because I had previously done another extensive coaching curriculum, including recovery. And I'm a nurse. And so it was just a natural fit. And I started coaching so that I sort of, there's no trading, but it was more you just sort of in recovery, there's times when certain things are tabled slightly and then another program sort of gets front and center. And so that's what I was doing. But there is, when I'm at an AA meeting and they just start I want to say preamble and I just the language, I can just feel my nervous system just like literally like down. I'm with my higher power. It's like, oh, right. Time to go inward. And it's that special time when I was in early recovery, when I would hear it twice a day. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. Dawn was also, I guess, on the podcast, and I went through the same training you did. And, I'm going to do an overview after we're done. And so I will talk about, I was also very excited to talk to you because you are so well educated around the recovery space, which is really important to me. Like I want to highlight people who have done their personal work, but have also educated themselves on how to help and facilitate the healing process for those of us who suffer with addiction, because there are a lot of people out there positioning themselves in the recovery community that don't have the credentials or don't have the specific recovery training, which I find terribly alarming. So I was so happy to see that you have really dedicated so much time and energy to, your own, not just your own personal experience, but to help facilitate a healing for others too. That's super important to me. And
Thank
we'll
you.
talk a little more about that later, but yeah, you're doing such good work. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Um,
You
yeah, thanks. We talked a little, I'm adding a new question to the lightning round because I think it's so important for people to have examples of what a spiritual experience looks like. And you and I shared a story with you earlier. Did it sort of, maybe trigger some stories that you have that you might want to share about what a spiritual experience looked like for you?
Yeah. So I'm going to give two examples and I'm going to click through them briefly. I'm going to give it a spiritual experience before I got into recovery. And this was early on in my life. And then one in recovery, or actually early sobriety. So the first one is I wanted to share that I as a young girl growing up in a very conservative area, I had sort of like big dreams for myself, and I always just like wanted to own my own company. But I had the messages of girls don't own companies, or you're not smart enough, or that's only for millionaires, or anyways. But so no, I bring that up. So knowing that, like in my subconscious, I always wanted to own my own company. So anyway, I go to college, graduate, and bottom line is I find my way to a really awesome job, and I am fired, but for no fault of my own. And I'm just going to streamline through this. No fault of my own. I'm doing an exceptional job. It was in sales, no fault of my own. And I get another sales job. And I'm excelling. I'm doing extremely well. And again, I'm fired. Well, this time it's because I will just say they realized how well I was doing, that they changed the contract and wanted to pay me less for commission. Anyway, wouldn't
I'm
sign
familiar.
it. They fired me. Now, this is the serendipity. I got fired 1 year apart from each other on the same day, which is St. Patrick's Day. So, okay. So I was fired in 87 on St. Patrick's Day, and 88 on St. Patrick's Day. And this is where the big story, or the big reveal here, is I turn to my then fiance and say, I want to start my own company so no one can fire me.
Yeah.
And I said, I feel I have a great idea, and I have the confidence. I don't even have a job, so it's not like I'm quitting a job. And I mean, it's right there, right when one door closes, another opens. And he says to me, okay, I like this idea you have. You go out, you try to get it going, which means sell an idea, get money, start the company. And do you know, that's exactly what I did. And 17 years later, we sold that company for a nice little price. So I would never have started my own company had I not been fired twice. Not once. It took twice for it to be like, it's time for you to be in charge, right?
That is so cool. It's like they say that, first you'll get the message in a whisper, and then it's like a pebble, and then a rock, and then you get the brick wall.
Right. So that's the one. Nothing to do with recovery, but having to do with my dreams.
Yeah.
Having to do with what I wanted anyway. But it took two being fired twice, which doesn't feel good.
That must have been so painful, especially for an overachiever, right? Especially when you were succeeding.
Yes. And in my 20s.
So
and then very briefly, the other one was I was in India with Tommy Rosen. You
went to India?
Yeah.
Tommy Rosen.
I did.
Wow.
And the main reason was I wanted to study yoga. Like I really, like I'm a lifelong learner.
Serious.
and I just wanted to study yoga. And as it turns out, I ended up getting my 200-hour certification, because that's what the course was. And it was Tommy and his wife, Kia Miller. But anyway, when I went there, I mean, I just went because I wanted to study yoga, but it was during one of our long, like, morning meditations that we would have from 6 to 7 in the morning, which actually is still sleeping in for Kundalini yoga. I mean,
don't they get up at like 3:30 or something crazy?
Right. So we got a little break. And literally it was during that sunrise that I realized that I wanted to take my passion of health. And when I like reclaimed my holistic health nurse inside of me, that has always been there. I mean, I've always had an active license, but I was just doing other things, and realized that I wanted to be essentially a recovery and health coach for women in early recovery, and to help them focus on their health. Like, I came up with this idea, and I just remember when I came up with it, I like just broke out into a sweat, because I realized, oh my God, this is fantastic. Like, this is like, it's right there. Like, I already love, holistic health. And there's so many amazing recovery coaches, but not a lot of people focus on the health. And alcohol is toxic. And we need more people focusing on the health, that have compassion and love, and not just, with the chart in front of them and looking for a diagnosis and filling out the codes, and okay, that'll be $150, please. So I just, so that was my aha moment, my spiritual moment, really. And it was in India, great place to have it. So,
and that was where the 5 stages of healing was kind of born from.
Part of, yes. I certainly didn't have it articulated back then.
But that was like the beginning.
But that was the beginning, right? And because I was in the middle of a healing journey myself.
Right.
And part of that was to study yoga. Like, anything about yoga always was so amazing and fascinating to me. And I just thought of it as like most of us do, is it's a physical practice.
Mm-hmm.
But I got wind that actually, no, if you read the text, the Yoga Sutra text, it's the physical practice is just really a small part. And I thought, wow, now that gets my attention. And so that's why I went. But yes, I was on a healing journey. I was seeking out healers, practitioners, alternative wellness, professionals, and to really focus on healing myself as fast as possible. Like, I mean,
I chuckle because at 28 years sober, it's like, there's no fast. Well, there is and there isn't, right?
Well, that's what, when we get there, there are certainly things we can do to put ourselves in a position to heal.
Yeah, I agree. I 100% agree. Let's transition a little bit.
Okay.
So, obviously this is about recovery, and you did 12 steps and all that. How old were you when you first started drinking?
I was in college, and honestly, my sort of substance of choice was really pot.
Me and you would be best friends.
I just, it's interesting. The alcohol wasn't really prominent in my life until in my 20s.
Until college.
Until after college.
Oh, how old were you when you started smoking pot then?
I not super young, a senior in high school.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, were you focused when you were growing up, were you focused on, academics and school and all that?
Yes.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yes. And also I was in a very strict household in a very conservative area. So,
where did you grow up?
Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Okay. And were you raised in a Christian household?
Yes. Okay. Yes. I mean, there.
Is there more to that story? I don't know.
No, I mean, in other words, we attended church on Sundays.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when at this point, it's hard to answer that question, isn't it? Because we know in recovery, you know, the whole Christianity, there's the organized religion, the
Yeah.
structure, and then there's the culture of Christianity, and then there's the teachings of Jesus, and they're not often the same.
They're not the same. No. Yeah, it can be very confusing. I mean, I grew up in the Christian church, and but there was pretty harsh discrepancies between what people were saying and what they were doing, which was super confusing to me as a kid.
Right.
Were your parents religious, or are they just sort of like what were they like?
Actually, so my parents divorced when I was quite young, and my dad is a Unitarian Universalist, which he still is. And my mother is on, it's hard to say what she is. I would say maybe she's agnostic, but just she remarried a very strict Episcopalian.
Okay.
And so we went to an Episcopal church, and with that second marriage.
How old were you when your mom got remarried?
I was in, I want to say second grade. So
you were young.
7 or 8. And then they ultimately divorced as well.
Okay, man, must have been so hard on you.
There was a lot of divorce in my youth. My father also got remarried, and then he got divorced around. Yeah. So there was a lot of divorce. And then he ultimately remarried a third time and has been married 30 years. So
was it, sorry to interrupt you, but that divorce thing for kids is so hard. And I think that, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but for me, I didn't realize it until much later that I sort of thought if I had been better, then maybe my parents wouldn't have divorced. Right. Like I learned later, the kids often take on responsibility for what happens in the house, not knowing that they're just children and they don't, your parents have, lives of their own and reasons of their own. Does that ring true for you at all? Did you have that kind of experience?
Yeah. I completely can relate to what you're saying, and I'll take it a step further is on top of that, I felt like I was always taking care of my parents.
Oh, yeah.
So there was some relational trauma, but not in the direction that often can happen. I was becoming very aware that my parents were not healthy. Of course, I didn't have the vocab for this.
Right. Yeah.
But
Which is why it's confusing, right?
It just became very, very confusing. And so, but I also learned to lie very well. So I would tell people what they needed to hear to keep them whole. Like, how was your day? Great. Yeah. Even if I didn't have a great day, I didn't want to like complicate their life because I knew their life was struggling.
So you didn't want to upset them.
Right.
So you just held it all in.
Right. And so, yeah, I actually talked about this in one of my webinars that I did a bit ago, but how I think a lot of us that end up in recovery, of course, in active addiction, we don't speak the truth a lot. Like I'm not drinking, or I only had 2, or what, or I'm going to the grocery store when you're really going to the liquor store, or just on and on. I mean, the lies are endless, really. And a lot of it is, I didn't think about it as lying. I thought about it as I'm giving information so they don't get upset, or, I'm telling them what they want to hear, like that. And that's why it was kind of easy for me to get into sales. It's like you position things. So, and a lot of it is, it's a positioning.
It is. Yeah. Sales is about positioning, but
it's a positioning thing.
No, I really relate to, in my mind, I interpret that as like a survival skill.
Survival, total.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like we need our parents they're the ones that give us everything that we need, or whether we really need it or not, everything that we want, we need. And so we learn, I think at a young age, to manipulate them so that we can get what we need. But I have learned to let go of the shame of that, because that's a survival skill.
Yeah.
We had to survive our childhoods. That must have been so hard. Okay, so the adults in your life are not exactly stable. Is that fair?
Yeah.
They're having a hard time with relationships, and you learn that if you just tell them what they want, if you stuff your feelings and tell them what they want to hear, then you can get your needs met.
Yes. Or
Okay.
it's a means to an end.
Means to an end. Yeah.
Yeah. Their needs are met. My needs are met. Less interference.
It's really a service that you're doing for them.
Less interference.
Right. No, I totally get it. Yeah.
I think the term is enmeshment. I can't be 100% sure of that, but yes. There are some people doing some amazing work out there with trauma and relational trauma.
Trauma. Yeah.
And I never realized, this relational trauma doesn't mean your parents don't love you. Like,
yes, 100%. Yeah.
Right. It just means that there's that the situation is not putting them in a position to succeed. Children are in the picture, and often it wreaks havoc.
I talked to Dufflin Lammers about attachment theory styles, and it was so interesting to hear how, I think she said it was like 70% of people that have addiction have like an avoidant attachment disorder.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I do a holistic health course, and Heather Monroe is, she actually now works with Tommy Rosen, and she's like part of his staff, I believe, but she also has her own private practice. Like many practitioners, they're affiliated with a variety of places or treatment centers. So Heather Monroe, she is fantastic. And she speaks about relational trauma, and she talks about the avoidant attachment and there's the other one, avoidant, and
I don't know. There's like 4 of them.
There are, right.
I'll have to put those in the show notes too.
And so, so that's when I learned so that's what it is, right? Is I was always feeling like I had to take care of everyone else. And so my childhood I just grew up quickly.
And then you grew up to be a nurse.
And I grew which actually is Enneagram number 2, which I have part of me, but not as much as the other 2. So
and it's so interesting, because I think as we heal from these things, we learn that, if those things hadn't happened, I wouldn't be the person I am today. Like, you're helping a lot of people now. Like, you have this deep-seated need to alleviate suffering in a variety of ways, like in a holistic approach. And so when they say the promises in the 12-step rooms, they say, we don't wish to shut the door on our past. We don't regret, and I think it's because at some point we realize that we are uniquely qualified to help people, because you've been there, you can recognize it, and you can help to heal it.
Yeah, so beautifully said, Arlene. I love
that. Thank you. Gold star for me. I'm an achievement junkie too. That's why we friends. Okay, so I did the same thing as you did. I loved weed because it like numbed me out. Is that kind of what it did for you as well?
So I have a very I don't like to use the word hyper. That word has been used to describe.
Rude.
Energetic. I'm very energetic. I have high energy, and it needs to go somewhere.
Yes.
When we were growing up, we didn't have like sports. So thankfully I was a swimmer, and I was on the swim team, and that was year round. Thankfully.
Wow.
I got to college, I did run sometimes, but there was when we were going through just middle school, high school, and college, it was right before the whole aerobics phases and Just, I mean, then the triathlon.
Jazzercise.
Yeah, yeah, there wasn't even really gyms around. Like I just,
Right,
anyway.
yeah.
So I didn't have a vehicle to get some of this out, which is why I use the word movement. You know, it could be exercise, and walking is exercise, is movement. So that helps me. But so pot, sure. I mean, we're self-medicating. It just kind of it would chill me out. So I don't believe I presented like a classic quote unquote stoner. No, and I don't mean anything derogatory there whatsoever, because
we love the stoners too. Yes.
My normal personality is way up here. So pot would just get me at a level playing field. And so everybody comes with their, you know, drugs do different things. It's fascinating. I will say I'm thrilled though that marijuana is legal. It had no business being illegal when we were growing up, and just the harshness of people that, you know, were especially of color and that were thrown in jail. And it's just, I'm glad we have moved off of that, and that marijuana, because it's not anywhere as toxic as alcohol.
I know, isn't that crazy?
Yeah, like, you can't even compare the two.
No. I mean, people don't drive erratically necessarily on pot the way they do on alcohol. It's not even close.
And then now that I'm in recovery, I mean, I've never really abused pot, but I'm not doing anything.
You practice abstinence?
Absolutely. Because what my primary motivation, is recovery, is staying in recovery. But next to that is brain health. Yes. And I don't want anything getting to my brain cells, but, you know, MCT oil and celery juice and a good night's sleep and natural sunlight. I mean, so
we can use all those things.
I missed that boat where it was legal.
Isn't that funny? So what happened to you when did you decide that this is problematic? I need to practice abstinence. Did you have like a moment of clarity? Did you hit rock bottom? What happened that you decided to go that route?
That's such a great question. And I love it when you ask people this, because it never gets old telling it. And it never gets old hearing other people's story either. So for me, you all now know a little bit about me, high achiever. So I did marry very smart. So I married in my late 20s. And I had a very full life. So we ran the company that I started. We ended up running. It was very successful. We had 75 employees. Wow. And then I had 3 kids in my 30s. And things were rolling right along. When I would relax, I would use alcohol. All my friends drank for relaxation. I can't even say I knew anyone that had a drinking problem in my 30s, believe it or not. So when I did have 2 incidences, I had a 3rd C-section, and I was told that I would no longer be able to have any more children. And friends and family would say to me, "Oh, Jill, you're so lucky. You have 3 boys, even though you didn't get the girl you wanted, you have 3 boys, and you should be so happy." Mm-hmm. And I actually went into a postpartum depression that I didn't recognize. I was depressed because somebody else was making the decision for me that my child rearing years are over. I think I legitimately was in a postpartum depression just from being postpartum. And my 3rd C-section was quite traumatic. We almost lost the baby, and everybody's healthy now, but also, it wasn't on death's door, but it was a difficult delivery. And just the whole experience just threw me. And then the second thing that happened is we sold the company, and we were supposed to sell it at a particular, price, and it was supposed to go just so. And then at the last minute, things a bit fell apart. We still sold it, but I was left feeling like a failure. Like I know, it's so sad. I was left feeling like a failure. So I had, I stuffed my postpartum depression. And also, I didn't even know what depression was. Like, I have that opposite problem. I'm more, up. I've not been
I see
down.
that.
Right.
You're happy.
And so I started drinking. That is when it turned. And I want to say that was around 42. Shortly after that, we moved to Park City, Utah for a complete lifestyle change. We had 3 small boys, and we moved from Maryland to Park City, Utah, which is a fantastic place to be. But for me, it was kind of a lonely move. And I also didn't want, moving is hard for me because I fall in love with houses. And at that point, we had been in our house for a long time. All 3 children were brought home to, this beautiful home that we had built. Anyway, point is, my drinking just started accelerating in Park City, and I started drinking alone, like regularly, not just like, a glass of wine while I'm having dinner, but no, like a very stiff vodka before the wine that I'm having while I'm making dinner. And I just intuitively knew to hide it. Like, I knew what was happening was not the best, but I just was like, it's okay. You need this. I mean, you're just trying to transition into a better. And I kept saying to people, I lost my mojo in this move. Well, what it was, I did lose my mojo because I now had alcohol use disorder. I was mild to moderate at that point. I mean, it's a progressive disease. I've studied it now. I lost my mojo because guess what I got? I got the alcohol use disorder clearly. So, and then, things just slowly started deteriorating, where my husband just started noticing, you're drinking a lot of vodka. I went to go, neighbors would come over, and I went to go serve them some vodka, and like the liter's gone, like, or almost empty, like, and I didn't have any, and we just got the bottle like last week, and things like that. And then I would forget things. And bottom line, I'll just fast forward. My husband just kept saying, you need to get help. But while this is going on, we're running a retail store. So this is the High Achiever. So we bought and we ran this super successful retail store on Main Street in Park City. People loved our store. I had such a great time in that store. That's like sales on steroids, really. Yeah. And I was like I was on the Main Street Business Alliance, right? So I was on, I was volunteering and the chamber, blah, blah, blah. Let's see, my kids were, doing amazing things. So I was always like, a parent volunteer with whatever they were doing, whether it was soccer or music or chess. And then I was a fitness instructor. I was a spinning instructor. I then started doing triathlons and placing. I mean, I just kept thinking, I can't possibly have a real drinking problem if I'm running a company, doing triathlons, teaching spinning at 6:30 in the morning, 3 times a week. Like, and this is why I use the technical term alcohol use disorder, because alcoholism is not a correct medical term, and one I could not relate to. And the term alcoholic is a term that I honestly just still, I am a woman that with alcohol use disorder in long-term recovery. Like, I can own my disorder from here to kingdom come, but I'm not my disease. Like, so, but I will say in very early recovery, when AA was helping me so much, I was more than happy to say, hi, my name is Joan. I'm an alcoholic. And I understand why it's important to associate with that. But the nurse in me is very medical. And I have found, I think it kept me sicker longer some of this language that can accidentally be shaming or bring stigma to the situation. And this is something in my works, even ongoingly, that I write about and study. And some of it isn't, it's words matter. Words matter. And sadly, like, I mean, just even, well, I'm getting a little off topic here, but I just hear it even all the time now with neighbors will say, oh, so, oh, I'm on this diet. I feel like an alcoholic. I have to just live one day at a time, and saying it despairingly.
Yeah.
And, I know better, and I don't let it pull me off my center. But when you're drinking, you don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I finally went into, my husband gave me an ultimatum because he just said, I cannot watch this anymore.
Wow.
And he gave me an ultimatum: you must get help. And for me, I got to the point where I just was like, go big or go home. I went into inpatient.
Full speed ahead.
That changed my life. What's that?
Full speed ahead.
Full speed ahead, girlfriend. None of this outpatient stuff. Inpatient.
Okay, so you did the inpatient. Was that like a 30-day program?
It was. And after about the third day, after the shock of it, I realized this is fascinating.
Yeah.
That's what I'm a lifelong learner. As soon as I could like get 3 days behind me, I just was fascinated. And it was an AA program, a 12-step program. Because of course, in this facility, there were people there that with all kinds of substance use disorders. And it was this 12-step program, and I ate it up. I loved it.
Yeah.
I ate it up. I couldn't read enough. I couldn't write enough. I immediately got a sponsor and started meeting like right away. Like I just couldn't start fast enough. And I love step 4 where you do the columns. Like,
favorite step ever.
And I was like, oh, how interesting. And I just, yes. So I'm a huge fan of 12 steps. There's nothing like it. I think everybody in the world should be doing the 12 steps.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And okay, so when did you sort of transition to, so you went to India with Tommy Rosen and did that, and then you had like this epiphany where it sounds like the 5 stages of healing was kind of born there. And I know ideas take time to evolve, but let's talk a little bit about your 5 stages of healing. And I'll just note for the listeners that I'm going to post, you have a beautiful graphic that we can share it for a minute on here. If you're watching the YouTube, you'll be able to see it, but I'm going to put it at the odatchat.com website so that people can see what it is. But maybe you can just kind of walk me through the 5 stages of healing that you use now in your work with other women.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, I did go to, I went through a period where I specifically had the mindset that I was on a healing journey. And how this came to be is that when I finally got like hit around 90 days, when I was very clear-headed, I really realized just how sick I was. Now this is, over, I would say alcohol abuse or misuse starting around the age of 42. And I went in at 55. So I went through, those later years, including menopause. And that is very toxic on any body, but especially a woman's body, and especially as our hormones change. And so I had autoimmune disorders. I was I was not my normal weight. I was actually another 40 pounds over what my normal weight was. I had GI problems, skin problems, eye problems, dental problems.
Wow.
I mean, I could kind of go on. And I basically just became aware of how sick I was and realized I need to heal myself. And I know enough get this going, because I am a nurse. I'm an RN with an active license, and I've always been interested in holistic health. So not that I didn't go to allopathic doctors, because I did, but but majority of the success and the changes and the help and support to really move the needle with the autoimmune disorder and some of the other issues I mentioned came from naturopath doctors, functional medical doctors, and then, of course, chiropractor work and acupuncture work, other kinds of healing massages like craniosacral work. Anyway, so I couldn't tell my story enough. And because everybody shared something interesting that would help. So that's where in India, studying yoga was part of that healing journey, because I also became aware that when we say mind body, like those sound like two things, but they're really one.
Right.
And that's when I realized it's all connected. Until I clear up my resentments, I'm not really going to turn the corner. Until I reduce my stress, I'm not really going to be able to heal, because stress is in the sympathetic nervous system and healing resides in the parasympathetic nervous system, which is why meditation reduces stress and brings you into the healing state. So all of this, like I just brought it all together, and that's when I created the 5 stages of healing. And so the stage 1 is stop. Right? I make this really simple. Really, really simple. And basically in stage 1 is often, and by the way, I'm going to, for our purposes, because this is a recovery podcast, explain this about, and our example is alcohol use disorder, but I am on other health podcasts, and this could be just as much about metabolic health and diabetes. So this is about any chronic progressive disease that we can influence, which is like 95% of disease. So stop is often a dramatic incident happens. For me, it was the ultimatum that my husband said, I can't watch this anymore. If you don't go and get help, I'm going to have to leave. And that, and the fear of him leaving was greater than the fear of me going and getting help and then learning how to live a life without alcohol. So this rock bottom scenario could be a DUI, you could lose your job, you could be hospitalized due to pancreatitis, and et cetera, et cetera. But for me, it was simple words from a loved one. So
that's pretty traumatic.
Very, it was very traumatic. And the question here really is what needs to change? You need to stop, and what needs to change. Next is, and also in this stage is I encourage people to embrace the gift of desperation.
Amen to that.
Amen.
There is such leverage. There is such leverage in desperation.
Oh,
yeah. I won't belabor the point, but I think the stopping, it's like, I think that's the crux of the alcohol use disorder. I still use the word alcoholism just because it's everybody kind of gets it, but that is the crux of the problem, is you can't stop.
Yes.
And so this rock bottom, the dramatic incident propelled you into rehab, and that's where you were able to stop.
Absolutely. I was able to, yes. I was able to get away from it.
Yeah.
I gave up my control. Right. I realized Jill is no longer, I don't need to hold the reins right now. I just need to be a student of life and lead with a beginner's mind.
Surrender. Yeah.
Yes. Surrender. Beautiful. And that leads us to our next step, which I have called accept. And really, we cannot heal and we cannot change what we do not accept. And this is probably the most important phase, accept, because this is where people get tripped up. and there's many reasons. I mean, this stage admittedly is full of, there's some physical pain because we're not numbing, or we're becoming clear enough to realize like, oh, my this hurts, my that hurts, or you're realizing your body is not healthy and you're sober to see it. Also, you're not numbing your emotional pain, so you need new tools. It's a painful stage.
Yeah, emotional pain is physically painful.
Yes, exactly, Arlena. Oh my gosh, yes. So, but acceptance is difficult for other reasons, because we're sorting through a new reality, and it could be like fear of living a different lifestyle. It could be you get to the point where you're just unwilling to change. Like you think, oh, I can just moderate again. It really wasn't that bad. That's another form of not really accepting the true reality. Some people get like angry or resentful over what was lost. Like they're grieving. They literally go through the grieving process because it's, I mean, it's
such a good point. And I sorry to interrupt you, but that is so important to call out, because a lot of people feel guilty that they miss alcohol.
Yeah.
Or drugs or whatever, like whatever it is that you were using, people miss it. And that is a valid feeling. It doesn't mean that you're not in surrender. It doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. We miss it. It was hugely helpful at one point, right? And we have to let it go. And so when you talk about acceptance, the first thing I thought of is it's just acknowledging reality. It's like, this isn't working anymore.
Right.
Such an important step.
Such an important step. And also there could be lack of support. And this is a biggie. We see this a lot with our clients and on Facebook. And, as one partner realizes that they, are in active addiction and need to change and find themselves purposefully in recovery, and their partner, it doesn't make any changes, and just the clarity of the one partner with the other realizing, and that is a tough spot to be. Lack of support. Oh, I liked it better when you drank. Like those kinds of words are spoken, and it is hard. And so anyway, so there are reasons why this particular step is difficult. And so I want to make the point, is that if this is where if you don't progress, in other words, we're either walking, towards sustainable recovery, or we're walking away from sustainable recovery. And sometimes it's, people stop working their program, or these other things that I just mentioned take hold and are more front and center than by the wayside. And so people sadly backdoor back into really pre-step one, and they relapse. And that is, and I didn't mean to drop my voice. So let me rephrase. And they relapse. Okay. So I'm going to go higher, because relapse is a part of recovery. It's, as Tommy Rosen says, it's neither good or bad, but it's painful. Meaning, don't put judgment on relapse. Relapse has purpose. Right. Not we are the luckiest, but the other fantastic program out there, Nick, oh my gosh, I'm just blanking. Naked Mind, This Naked Mind.
Annie Grace. Yeah.
Annie Grace. Thank you. Annie Grace. Oh, see, brain fog. Annie Grace. I haven't taken her program. I have listened to a couple of her Facebook lives, but I understand from other people that she refuses to see relapse as bad, or good probably, but she sees it as a data point. And what Tommy Rosen says is he sees it as you need more research. Or actually another, my addiction counselor would say that it need more research, but all thought leaders in this space try to put relapse in perspective, right? Is okay. It's not the end of the world if you move in another direction, but then where are you? Is that where you want to be? Is that showing up as your best self? and how can you get back? And I have relapsed, and I relapsed a few times before I finally turned the corner and moved forward.
Quitting is hard. Quitting is so hard.
And a part of it, you think you're going to moderate, or you think you deserve it, or I can't possibly go through the 2016 election without drinking.
Yeah.
Right? Excuses, but they are valid because you're fresh, you're new in recovery, and the tools are still being developed. Yeah. So for anyone out there that has relapse, give it meaning. Or it's okay.
It's a data point.
It's a data point.
This is all an experimentational process where we have to, we add tools and try them out. Does it work? Did it work? That's all. Yeah. It's not, it's impersonal. That's kind of what I like about the science approach. It's that it's kind of impersonal. It's like, oh, did this work for me? No. Okay, let's try something else.
Right. It's no shame in relapse.
No shame.
None, zero, total compassion. But pick yourself back up, right?
Just begin again.
So, okay. So stop, accept. Now we're at learn. And learn is you shift from, so there's less pain in learn, right? So that uncomfortableness is in that accept and surrender, right? There's a lot to work through there. But once you move forward, you're in, okay, all right, game on. How can I really find purpose again in my life? How can how can I show up as the best version of myself? How can I heal myself? What do I want to do next? Who am I? And how can I bolster my education? Where do I want to go with the next 50 years of my life? Mm-hmm. So instead of I have a problem, it's I have an opportunity.
Right. Reframing.
Yes. And it's overcoming the challenge and finding the new normal. Right. So there's so much hope and optimism in this stage, and it's fun. And this is literally, for me, I went on my healing journey. I was in a learning phase. I wanted to, a lifelong learner, just literally think and lead with curiosity. And if something it like hurts, like if you hear something, say, oh, how curious that what that person said is really pissing me off. Oh, how curious. How interesting. This is a great place for me to practice what I learned about boundaries.
Oh, yeah. Boundaries. Yes.
Try to really talk yourself through this. And if you can stay in curiosity, you can somewhat float through without too much negative fallout. Sure, some things are going to really hit us in an uncomfortable way. But if you stay in curiosity, you can kind of analyze it and work past, right? Always with love and compassion. So it's really the beginning of the hero's journey too. Because you start learning about one thing and that opens a door for another and another and another. And you're meeting, this friend introduces you to this person, this speaker introduces you to this concept written by this book. Next thing you know, you're on a podcast or, and
there's so many resources now.
It's just like a web opens up. It's incredible. And so I say that the next place that people can stagnate, unfortunately, is kind of after this phase, although this phase really learning is always happening. But I say when I'm working with clients is when you find something that a tool or a practice that you think will really, really benefit you, put it in your daily routine. What you focus on grows, right? What you spend your time on is who you are and what you will become. And so what an accidental little pitfall here is to learn all these amazing things and then not put it in practice.
Taking action. You know what? I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I think people learned something and it kind of gives you that little dopamine hit. Yeah. And then that's it. People don't actually put the information into action.
Right.
And you can kind of get into this self-help junkie mode, which I have done.
Yes.
occasionally fall back to, is because it is exciting. You get new information, you get new context and perspective, and it kind of gives you this little dopamine rush. And then we just move on with our lives. It's so important to apply the information that you're learning.
Beautiful. Beautifully
Is that
said.
stage 4?
That's stage 4 is routine. And we
Routine. Okay.
right. It actually, I'm sorry, it's commit.
Commit.
Every stage is a verb. But the noun would be action. Or
Okay.
actually, that's a verb too. But yeah, or routine, which is a verb or a noun. But yeah, so and to be clear, stage 4 is commit.
Commit.
You want to
Got it.
commit to a daily routine. And it doesn't even matter if after you're if it's one thing,
Yeah.
like and remember learning to live a life alcohol free or whatever the substance or behavior is what we're doing is we're changing our habits. Yes. So we are removing habits that no longer serve us. I don't even need to like to use the word bad habit. Remember, nothing is good or bad.
Okay.
Those are judgment words.
Changing habits.
We are changing habits. So we're removing what no longer serves us. It used to serve us. It no longer serves us.
That's all. No judgment.
No judgment.
I love that.
And we're adding new habits, which now does serve our highest good, right? Where we are in life and the choices and decisions we've made carefully, painfully, right? By the time you've had a couple of relapses and you're in your mid-50s, this is crystal clear.
Amen, sister. Yes.
So yes, it's really and the routine is all about the nervous system, right? Try to do the same things,
regulate
at the same time, and how we opened up. And then the last phase is transform. And this again, the 5 stages. It's not a destination, girlfriends. It is a journey. Yeah. Right. Transformation is happening all the time. Yeah. And I honestly live in learn, commit, and transform every day. Yeah. Learn, transmit, or commit and transform every single day. I can see how this isn't necessarily linear either. Yes. It's all kind of happening all at the same time. Right. But I like the focus, right? The focus allows you to sort of, it feels like early recovery, there was so many things coming at me all the time. That's why I like the process of 12 steps. That's why I like this idea of the 5 stages, because it did help to slow my thinking down and help me to focus on certain things that were going to change my life ultimately. Yes. Change habits and outcomes. Transform is my favorite. I like transform. Beautiful. Most people sort of do their best work, personal work, professional work, if they're following a system. Like Bill Gates says, he'll take a system anytime over like a genius person. Systems will win every time. And that's what we're doing with the 12 steps. We're following a system. That's what we're doing with the 5 stages of healing. What stage are you in? I'm saying this to you amazing people who are listening to this awesome podcast. And we thank you for doing that. And we're thrilled you're with us. And ask yourself, what stage are you in now? And what are you doing now that is helpful in your current stage? Like if you're learning right now, are you really like learning as much maybe as you possibly could? Like, do you say, oh, I want to learn, but maybe you don't quite take those next couple steps. So it's like the world is your oyster. So drop the fear and lean into it. Right. Or if you've learned a lot, but boy, that routine got a little rusty, especially when summer started. Now the kids are home.
Traveling, that throws everybody off their routine.
Right. So I actually put together, I call it the Vitality Tracker, because it's all about being healthy and vital. Right? The Vitality Tracker. And it's a nice, loving, compassionate checklist where we write down and I categorize it mind, body, and spirit, and what we're trying to do in our given day or achieve in a given week. Some things are maybe not daily, but a couple times a week. And it's a prompter. And I find a lot of clients after 3 months, they don't need it because everything is part of the routine. And then the last question to ask yourself is, what is keeping me from proceeding to the next stage? Like, are you in accept, and are you struggling with accept? Right? Are you still kind of agonizing? Like, oh, I wish I still had XYZ, as opposed to accepting, surrendering, and moving forward. Like, what is keeping you?
That's a good question. That's a good, like a journaling prompt too.
That is a journaling prompt. So I just find systems and models. This is a healing model, and not of disease. There's plenty of models that show how you go from here to disease, but this is a model and a progression of healing. And we are active participants on how well we heal.
Absolutely. This is so good. I want to be respectful of your time. This is so helpful. I mean, listen, when we were talking earlier, I was like, I like it when people walk away with something that they can apply right away. Man, you really delivered, my friend. I love this 5 stages of healing. I'm going to leave the graphic that you have in the show notes. I actually wrote a lot of the things you said down too. So I'll put this all in the show notes. So helpful. Tell me, before we go, tell me how people can interact with you. Do you have a website? You work with people one-on-one?
Oh yeah. So it's very simple. My website is my name, Jill Rathburn. So Jill, like Jill, Rathburn, Rathburn.
Easy peasy.
Easy peasy. And I just want to be clear that like I said in the earlier, is that there are some fantastic coaches that help people transition into early sobriety.
Yeah.
So from active addiction into early sobriety. And I'm not that coach.
Okay.
I am the coach to come to at 3 months, 6 months, or a year, when you say, wow, I need help on my health. I realized that when I put down the drink, I actually picked up the sugar. And I need yes, and I need some help with my metabolic health. That's metabolic health. And that's with your gut is part of that.
Yeah.
So anything health, mind, body, spirit, that I am all about that.
Yeah.
And like I say, I have an active nursing license. I'm a board certified recovery coach. And I love working with people who are ready to focus on their health. Interestingly, I do have people that have been like sober like 15 years. And it's like, where were you? Or where have you been? And come and work with me. And I have a lot of people from all kinds of programs that work with me. So
yeah, I mean, it's the truth be told, stopping drinking is just the very beginning. It's just the very beginning. Yep. There is so much more healing to like this. You're talking about a lot of somatic practices, mind, body connection, all that stuff, like you were saying earlier, the issues are in the tissues. And so, yeah, early recovery, like stopping drinking is just the beginning.
Absolutely.
There's so much more to learn.
So much more
as you go on.
And if you think of your recovery as a healing journey, like doesn't that just sound so like exciting and enlightening and like, oh my God, I'm on a healing journey. That's so fantastic.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
Sign up. I'm going to be on the healing journey.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun to be had. We are people who insist on having a good time.
Right. So those are the kinds of people that I work with.
Although okay, good. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah. Although I get calls from all kinds of people, I always make sure that I refer them and I stay with them until they are working with someone. And then I say, please come back to me when you're ready. So, hey, if you come to me, I always say, once you're in, you're in. Like, I mean,
Okay.
but I'll be the first to say, hey, I can't help with this first phase you're going to go through, because
Okay.
my real passion and expertise is over here.
Good.
So anyway, yeah. And then I do a group holistic health program, and I do that once a year. And I believe I'll be kicking that off again in the fall. I need to get my dates organized here. But if you
Okay.
go on the website, you could sign up for that and be on the wait list.
Awesome.
So yeah, so thank you
That's so good.
much for having me. You do such a service for people in recovery. As I mean, I probably have men listen to you as well. But for sure, with the She Recovers group and the AA group and everybody in recovery, all of these podcasts are elevating the experience. And
Absolutely.
I see people, tend a meeting, listen to a podcast. And here I've been in recovery since 2016 with, like I say, with a couple little relapses, but I still see it as part of the journey. I still entered recovery at 2016. I'm not in 2016, but yeah, I still have like one aha moment after another when I'm listening to these podcasts. So I would encourage your listeners is make that part of your daily routine. And there's so many fantastic ones with Arlena at the top of the list. So thank you so much to your audience and to you, Arlena, for having me.
Thank you so much. And congratulations on all the work that you do and all the people that you help. And thank you so much for joining me today.
You're so welcome.
You have a great day.
Bye-bye.